Okay, I think we're live. I want to welcome everybody. My name is Tony Presta, and I'm the incoming superintendent of Jefferson Union High School District. We're here for a 2x2x2x2 this afternoon. We're going to take a few minutes to introduce ourselves. I'm going to call first on my board members, and then we'll go to the other school districts in the city. So I would like to turn it over to Kalima.
Hello, I'm Kalima Salahuddin. I'm the president of the Jefferson Union High School District Board.
Andy Lee, board trustee, Jefferson Union High School District. And I'll pass this on to Audra at Bayshore.
Hi, I'm Audra Pittman. I'm the superintendent for the Bayshore Elementary School District, and I will hand it off to Teresa. Teresa, you're still muted.
Hi, I'm Teresa, Bayshore School District.
I am Dave Rudolph, Bayshore School District.
And so I'm Ronan Culver. I'm the superintendent of the Brisbane School District, and I'll let Jackie and then Kima introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jackie McLaughlin, Brisbane School District trustee.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kima Hayuk, and I'm also a Brisbane School Board trustee.
And then we'll go to City of Brisbane.
Okay, I guess I'll start. Madison Davis, Brisbane City Councilwoman.
Cliff Lenz, Brisbane City Council member.
Clay Holstein, City Manager.
Stuart Schillinger, Deputy City Manager, Admin Services Director.
And I realize that April, we didn't pass it over to you, April. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi there. I'm April Hawkins. I'm the Director of Communications and Staff Housing at Jefferson Union High School District.
Thank you. I'm always think I'm muted when I'm unmuted and vice versa. So I just realized I wasn't unmuted. You may also notice that there's two more boxes on the screen. The screen that says Jefferson Union is our IT director, Jake. He's helping us tonight with all of the Zooming. And Candace Bell, who is our administrative assistant, who's going to be navigating the public comments for us tonight. So thanks everyone for being here. What we're going to do is I'm going to share my screen and read through some slides that are just sort of organizing topic slides. And then we were hoping to just have an open discussion between the schools, districts, and the city. Have a time for a discussion, then a time for public comment, and then some sort of a time for closing remarks in case anybody wants to follow up on any of those public comments. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I've got multiple screens going on, and I'm hoping that I get it right. Okay. Can you see my screen? Madison, can you give me a thumbs up if you see it? Okay, great. Okay, so thanks for being here today. We just went through our welcomes and introductions. We're going to talk about the meeting purpose in just a moment. We are going to share a timeline review of the meetings that we've had thus far. We had a meeting with UPC on September 14th between the school districts. And so we wanted to share that information with you, the big ideas. Share our collaboration plan between the elementary school districts and the high school district, and then leave some time for discussion and public comment. The purpose of this meeting is to continue to inform our community about the collaborative efforts of the Bayshore, Brisbane, and Jefferson Union High School Districts regarding a 6-12 grade school on the Baylands development, and also to learn about the intentions of the city of Brisbane. You're not in a vacuum. Okay. The meeting timeline. So we started off on, well, there have been many years of talk about the Baylands and the development, but talking about the collaboration of the school districts and the school. On September 4th of 2019, Bayshore and Brisbane and Jefferson Union High School District met. On September 9th of 2019, the school districts had another meeting, but this time with the city of Brisbane. Then in December, again, the school districts met, Brisbane, Bayshore, and JUHSD. Met again in April 15th of 2020, last spring. And then, as you may recall, in May, the Bayshore, Brisbane, and JUHSD school districts held a community meeting. And so the superintendents and the school boards, there was a PowerPoint, and we discussed plans for the 612 school on the Baylands. September 14th of this year, the high school district, JUHSD, and Bayshore had a meeting with UPC to start talking about some plans. Then on October 5th, Bayshore, Brisbane, and JUHSD met. So we, Brisbane School District was not in the meeting with UPC, and so we met to talk about that meeting and to talk about plans. And then we thought it would be a really good idea for all of us to be together along with the city council and the city to find out, to make sure that we're all kind of moving in the same direction. So the collaboration between the school districts, we're planning a 6th to 12th grade school. We think now 500 would be the estimated attendance, 250 middle schoolers and 250 high schoolers. All this knowing that this is a ways away. And so there will certainly be more plans to be made, but this is our thinking right now. The meeting with UPC on September 14th consisted of us talking about that plan for the 612 school. UPC shared with us that the school would be on the 11-acre site along Bayshore Boulevard near the fire station. We also talked about how the school would function as a community facility. There wouldn't just be a school building, there would be fields and things like that that the community could use. And that there would be an estimated capital budget of $35 to $40 million. So those are the really big ideas. There's so many more details, and frankly, there might be information that we just don't even know. So what we wanted to do was open it up for discussion. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Open this up for discussion to be sure that what our understandings are the understandings of others, and give us time to just kind of talk in an open forum. I will cede the floor to anyone who would like to say some things. Andy and Kalima, we met in advance. I don't know if you wanted to start off the conversation.
Okay, if I'm share. So, it's been a journey for me, especially going through this process. I really just want to first thank the other school districts and the other board members for walking this journey with me and hearing me out, because that was a really important thing for me, to feel like our district and our issues were being heard. But also learning more about not just the Baylands development, but other developments that are happening in that area. Understanding that, especially now with the future of Samtrans, that it may be important for us to have something in that area, but also being held to the restriction of, I have no idea, nothing has been finalized yet with the city. So I feel like we're talking about things, especially like what the school is going to be, before we even have decided like what is Baylands going to be, and get a full kind of understanding of what Baylands is. So what I don't want to do, or my hesitancy is now, is to get too concrete on what we are doing without understanding what it is we're doing it for. And I don't want to tie, because most of the school decisions are going to be made by a school district that I am not going to be on the board of. It's been 8 years for me, and we're getting close to the end. So I don't want to tie the hands of a future district with decisions and stuff that we're talking about now before I have a true understanding of, is the plot of land that we've been told is going to be the plot of land, the actual plot of land, or is there other pieces of land? Is the plan that we're working for something that's fiscally feasible for us, or is there going to be issues? So what I think I will say is that we are committed to building or working on a high school in the Baylands area. And I feel like that's really as far as we can go until we have more information and move further down the line in the whole Baylands project.
Kalima, I had a question. I put it in the chat, but I was wondering, because you mentioned it in the 2x2 the other day about the future of Samtrans, and could you clarify, what about the future of Samtrans you're referring to? I'm not sure what you mean.
So because of COVID-19, Samtrans, like all public transportation municipalities, are getting hit hard. I mean, people are working from home, so they don't need to use public transportation the way they needed to use it previously. Also, folks that do need to get on the buses, they can't fill the buses like they used to. So to be fiscally solvent, they need to have a certain level of ridership on the buses. And they're not able to do so right now. So, they can't be making money. They were already in fiscal hard times before COVID-19. So a lot of the buses that they do for us, for school districts, are not, I don't know if they're profitable. We've had ongoing issues with Samtrans. So is there going to be a future where we have, not being able to predict the future? Samtrans may be okay in 10 years from now, but I'm just working on information I have right now. So there may be a need to have something on that side, because we might not be able to get a bus that's going to be able to bus people to Pacifica.
Right. Okay. No, that helps. I, as you know, as everyone knows, transportation has been one of the issues between our districts, and we have students that are going a long way to the high schools on your site, and so having a high school program on here is really welcome. Certainly, if there was a problem with Samtrans, that might impact any future high school here by making even more people come here. So, is that what you mean in terms of having a larger high school? Because the plan was to have 250 students, but if there's no Samtrans, or if Samtrans is in jeopardy, shouldn't we plan for a little bit higher to address that contingency? Or is that what you meant?
I don't know what to, I think we should, I'm open to hearing what everyone has to say on the subject. Again, I feel like that decision is going to be a decision by a future board on exactly what the size is. I think that there should be plans for a piece of land that, can be built out if that needs to happen and we need to expand the school, absolutely. But for right now, I know that for the students that we currently serve, all of them may not be able to go to Terra Nova. Some of them may want to go to Jeff, and there is going to be busing regardless of what happens with Sandra. That bus line may still be available. That mode of transportation may still be feasible and available for parents. But getting the students that want to go to a program or want to go all the way to Terra Nova, that might not be something that we're able to do. And right now, that's only 50 kids. So
you include Oceana in that too?
That's only 50 kids. So it's still like so I'm just counting the kids are on the bus. So Terra Nova and Oceana. So there may need to be something on this side in case people can't get to Terra Nova and Oceana in the future. And then also, because we know that there's the future development at the Cow Palace, there's future development at Mid-Penn. So there may be a need for something on this side. But I don't know how big it should be. But in working with the budget numbers that we have and working with what we can afford and listening to what both you and Cliff talked about. I mean, Cliff talked about like a 250 person program in Gilroy or a middle college program. That's around 250 kids. And right now, fiscally, we could make a middle college program possibly work in partnership with Skyline. So, but I'm working with the numbers of the budget that we have now. a future district may be working with different numbers. Their budget may be bigger, their budget may be smaller. They may be able to afford something different. So it's hard for me to speculate when I have no idea what what are the resources that I have? What is the budget that we're working with? How many exact students are we talking about? I have no idea.
I'm curious just in regard to the type of negotiation that the city might have. I know that when you talk to UPC, they designated this area, which is 11 acres. And is that something that is, and also it's down here, it'd be nicer to me if it was closer towards where the housing development of the Baylands is going to be, to sort of stretch out our community. But is that something that's up for negotiation with the city, or how is that? You know, you're sort of landlocked by the size of the parcel that's given with the size of this school currently, if that's what is available.
I think there's environmental concerns, if I might add, that, and I think we went over this in the previous meeting, that there was supposed to be a minimum distance from the tank farm and the landfill, and in fact, we were placed right next to the tank farm. Did by any chance any resolution come to that, or anybody talk to UPC for clarification? If not, it would be good to get clarification because it's right next to the tank farm. And my understanding is there's a underground, high pressure underground fuel pipe that goes to SFO from the tank farm. And that would be even closer to the school than to the tank farm. So I'm a little concerned about the site in general. Also to echo Jackie's point about it being kind of locked in on a certain size.
And I'm just more, I just am more interested in finding out now, knowing what we don't know, what is happening with Baylands, knowing that, COVID has slowed things down quite a bit, what's happening with UPC and the city's discussions at this point.
Does staff want to take that?
I can figure out how to unmute myself, I will. So it's hard to say what has caused them to slow down. I don't want to speculate on that. But they have, I know they're working on their environmental permits for the land remediations, and they still need to secure a water source. Those are requisites to having a completed application for study of doing the environmental study. So they are working on those aspects. What their timing is, at this point, I haven't heard anything from them for months in terms of what their timing is or what their thoughts are on that process. So I wish I had something more definitive to tell you tonight, but I don't.
So can I clarify then? Are you saying that since the last time they submitted something to you in the spring, there's been no communication between UPC and the city other than we're working on these prerequisites?
No, we're talking, Audra, but there's been no submission of an application at this point in time.
That's just what I wanted clarification.
Yeah, and if I can just add, and just preparing for today's meeting, I did reach out to Greg Bilkin just to get his take on the meeting that you all had. And I did ask him that question. I said, when are we going to see your plan? And he said that just what Clay had mentioned, there's a couple of things that they need to work on. He did mention COVID being an issue in regards to their calculations for office space. And so they're going to, reevaluate that. Of course, we have a very robust life science, industry at Oyster Point and now at Sierra Point. So that would probably replace a lot of the office space that they had originally thought. But, and Clay, you and I haven't talked about this yet, but I did ask Greg to reach out to you to present basically what they have right now so that we can start, at least having some prelim discussions at the subcommittee level. And he said, yeah, I will do that. I don't know, do you guys have any more information about, your discussions with Greg and your vision and any of that?
Well, either Tony and I, Tony or I can speak to that, just that we've continued to collaborate and also bring in the Brisbane School District in the conversations about building and having a joint campus that's a 612 campus, to the point that was on the slide. And Greg was excited about that. He was excited about the fact that we are working together to provide a quality educational program for all of the community, and that it's not going to be limited to one grade span, but that it would be able to serve the larger community, which includes Brisbane, Bayshore, Daly City, parts of South San Francisco, Colma, and possibly any students in Pacifica who may feel that whatever the program is when this opens in 15, 20 years, since we don't know what the time frame is on residential versus commercial, that there will be opportunities for our clients, our students, our community, to be able to be served in this environment. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to partner with the high school district to build a program that will serve the needs of the larger community.
Right, and just to piggyback on that a little bit, into my previous point, because Audra talks about the full breadth of who we'd serve. Like if 10 years ago, if you'd have told me Terra Nova would have less than 1,000 students, I'd have laughed at you. Again, with Terra Nova have less than 1,000 students? Never. That school has always been one of our bigger school draws. Now Jefferson is that school, and Jefferson is impacted, and we're turning away from Jeff. I don't know how school flow is going to happen. I don't know how, what school is going to be popular, where residential trends are going to happen. We try to predict and we try to work with folks. So I don't know what the demand is going to be on each of our individual schools, and how many people want to go to a school that's here from outside. But what I do want to do is to address this problem, because this has been a problem that has been brought to me by the Bayshore and Brisbane community since I've been a board member, that you guys would like to have a school in your area. So what I do want to come out of this is that I want to solve this problem for a future board. Like, I don't want to have a future board have to continue to have to work on this if we have a solution that I feel is fiscally something we're able to do. And so through this partnership, I feel like it's something that's fiscally feasible for us, that we don't have to bear the brunt of operating and managing a school site, that we can share that responsibility with Bayshore School District. So that to me is welcoming and makes me feel better in a fiscal capacity as a board member. And the other thing is, we already have a charter school. Like, I'm trying to manage it so that we don't create a situation where parents feel like we have to open another charter or we have to do something else, because that fiscal impact was huge. Having to share resources with the charter that's not even serving the purpose for what it was open for originally. So how do we work together to serve the needs of the community in a way that is predictable and that we can control? That's what I'm hearing. I'm hoping that, we can all get on the same page behind that shared goal and work collaboratively together, because I feel like we're not doing that right now, and it doesn't feel quite collaborative to me, and it should be. I mean, this is going to be a win for everybody. It could potentially be a win for everybody.
So I have kind of a list of questions here that I prepared. I know Cliff has some too, and some of them are my own questions and some of them are questions from the public. There are quite a few questions. Do you mind if I get into that, or is there anyone else who's wanting to talk right now?
Oh, I just never heard a response to if these type of variables are negotiable with the UPC through the city on where the school site is, what type of space is available. Is it landlocked at 11 acres? Could it be negotiated to be larger than that, so that if we start small, could it be expanded if that was something that needed to happen in the future? That's my only question.
Yeah, so if the project plan could be scalable. I mean, again, basically what Kalima was saying, in addition to what Jackie just said, the ideal situation, because of the number of unknowns and the timeline, the ideal situation would be have some sort of project plan that's scalable.
I mean, that would be my hope as well. I can't speak for where the developer is at and what he's willing to do, but from my perspective, you know, the larger the school that we can get, the better that will be from my perspective. And, you know, I think that that's something that, you know, I would ask to negotiate if possible. I can't speak, of course, on the rest of the behalf of the rest of the council, but in my mind, you ask for everything you want. So if that's something that's a desire that's there, I think that that's the purpose of us having these conversations, to kind of, you know, for the council to have a perspective of what's on your wish list and what you guys need, so we know what we're asking for. And that's what's like so hard about this process, is that there are so many unknowns. And if you look at Plan Bay Area 2050, the amount of housing that could come in just simply in Brisbane is an astronomical amount. We're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of units. And so I understand that we're kind of between this rock and a hard place, but unfortunately, you know, we're going to be getting into the position where we're going to need to start negotiating these things now. So the better idea that we can have from you guys, you know, the more successful that we're going to be to help negotiate on your behalf and behalf of whatever the board is, you know, in 10 to 15 years from now. So I think we want to try to set up as much flexibility as possible. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that that was possible or on the radar to happen, because I think that's, you know, with the future development, you have to have some flexibility here. A 250 student school, I remember, I think it was Ann Campbell who said they're usually, like Kalima said, the college, or it's an IB program, or it's something special, right? And I'm not saying we need a comprehensive high school out there, because certainly the Jefferson has they have several comprehensive high schools, but larger than 250 children, I think, would be desirable, personally. But.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, where my head's at too, and I'd love to.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with that as well. I know, Kalima, you mentioned the school in Gilroy. You know, and yes, I think it's like 270 students, 280 students, but that was just an example of a school partnering with a community college to have the majority of their students graduate with a diploma and an AA degree. So
right, but it was an example you gave to me of a kind of school that you thought would be possible. So that's how I heard about it from you.
Not in the numbers, but just in the potential style of it.
Oh, okay, because it's a misunderstanding, because the example from my notes, because I was like, are there any schools that small? And you said, yes, the Gilroy. So you gave it as example as a numbers, like it's possible to build a school that small. Yeah.
So I'm sorry if there was any misunderstanding there. I mean, you know, I'm in favor of a school that goes in phases, like you're talking about, David. And it's in the study that you all received, you know, starting off with whatever 500, 600 students and going up to whatever is really needed. And like Madison has said, you know, with PBA 2050, you know, Brisbane could be looking at a significant amount of additional housing. But, you know, really, when you look at the Cow Palace in that surrounding area, that could be huge. And so really, we need to be, you know, we need to be planning not just 5, 10, 15 years from now, but like 25, 35, 50 years from now. And how do we, you know, understand, those housing demands, and how do we provide the most appropriate and the very best educational opportunities that we can for everybody in the area. So
I think that it's really important to be thinking about, to the points that other people have made, is that if that's the kind of model that we want to work through, which I think it sounds like most of us, I don't want to say all, since not everybody has spoken, are in somewhat of agreement of that. We're limited based on the amount of acreage that the developer is willing to provide us. And so that needs to be said. If they are only willing to provide 11 acres for a school, you're not going to get a massive high school for an extremely large amount of students. And so that just needs to be part of the conversation. It needs to be something that is recognized. And as negotiations are occurring between the city and UPC, that needs to be taken into consideration, because you need to have land.
Absolutely. And, we have, a bunch of questions that, I think we should just kind of flush out and get through. And then I think hopefully then at the end, we've established a means to move forward with. So
okay, I'll go ahead and get started then. So I'd love to just get more clarity on the meeting that was had with UPC. Since I believe there was no representation from the city of Brisbane there. And in the slideshow that you presented, you talked about it being an 11-acre site, $35 to $40 million. And I just want to get a little bit more clarity. So to make sure I'm understanding this right, the amount funded through the developer fees would be 19 million, correct?
Yes, you know what, Madison, I'm going to pull up the notes that we got from Greg Vilken, just to make sure that I'm telling you the right answers. I'm pulling them up.
Oh yeah, don't take your time.
Yeah.
So to answer your question about that 19 million, that's an estimate based on what current developer fees are. Every 2 years they increase. Right now they're $4.09 for residential, and I think 63 cents for commercial. But again, it all depends upon when they break ground. They don't pay the developer fees until they are ready to break ground.
Sure. And I think
and then it's based on the square footage and what it is that they're planning on building.
So this is something that we're looking to get clarification from you all. I mean, the meeting with UPC was just to update them, like, okay, we have these plans, because there was stuff on social media that was like, UPC has no idea what the districts are talking about. So we shared with them our ideas, but I think instead of asking for us for things that may not be quite true, I think it'd be easier to just confirm with UPC, you all, what they are willing to do for us, and then bringing that back to us.
And for though, so I need to know what I'm asking for. So I'm trying to get an understanding of, like, for that 30, if we're just talking about that $35 to $40 million figure, how the school district what will need to happen in order to achieve just that amount?
So Madison, let me speak to that. I'll tell you what we spoke about. And so I think that with all of this, we were having that meeting with a set of understandings, right? That it was this 11-acre area that, we were kind of starting at a certain point. I think we all would agree that we need a lot more information to have really firm plans. But what we talked about that day was that the estimated capital budget would be $35 to $40 million, and that the amount would be funded through development fees of about 19 million. Again, that could be a different number. The developer
would likely be higher, right?
I would assume so, but that's
those don't generally go. I don't know these things, so those don't generally go down, right?
They don't generally go down.
It all depends upon what you allow them to build, because the number. So if they're figuring 19 million on 2,200 homes, and you say we're only going to build 1,900 homes, right, then no, it won't go up.
Right,
but
the figure in which it's calculated, the equation of per square footage of residential to commercial, that number doesn't go down. That increases with time, correct?
And I think that's not our expertise. Like that's why I feel like these are the questions that need to go to UPC.
Okay. So Tony,
the other we also talked about there would be developer contribution, which is undetermined, via community benefit budget that the city would determine how to allocate. There could be district funding, perhaps bond issuance. And he also talked, this is Greg Vilken, also talked about maybe a capital campaign of raising money in some way. And he used an example in our meeting. Oh gosh, I think it was in Denver. You know, he worked on a school somewhere else. And so he was talking about how they raised the money. So these were just ideas, but yeah, those are the numbers that we talked about that day.
Okay. And then I know we've been tossing around comprehensive high school, and I'd love just like for some information on what that means to you.
Well, I'll start. When you think of a comprehensive high school, you think of a high school that offers, you know, sports and offers a full array of classes that kids take. It's very different than, for instance, Oceana we don't consider that a comprehensive high school. We consider it an alternative high school. They don't have all of the sports. They don't have all of the programs that the other schools have, but they have a very specialized program. Typically larger.
Okay.
And if I could just jump in, how many students are at Oceana, Tony?
I believe there is, I don't have the number on the top of my head.
It's capped at 600. Yeah.
600?
Yep.
650.
All right. And they do offer, you know, some sports, because I'm a cross country coach and track coach, and I compete with them. So
They do. They don't have a
But
football
again, I think that this is way, like, I don't want to talk about what the school could possibly be or not be until I figure out how much land we have.
well, I mean, these are questions that we just like to ask. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but I think they're important to kind of get an understanding of what is out there. So, you know, just so we
Because
just
I
know.
think the school will be formed in relation to the amount of land that we're provided. So I can really tell you what's possible on 11, like Audra was saying, on 11 acres, we can tell you what's possible. On 22 acres, we can tell you what's possible. But I think it's confusing for the public because we're tossing out all these terms, and I don't want to build hopes up for something that we can't deliver.
Sure.
Definitely no one wants that.
I think though, in our past meetings, it was less focused from my perspective on land versus like how many students were going to be generated from the development. And that is what was going to drive the size of the school. So let's say by some grace of God, I could get you 40 acres. Are you saying that if I got you 40 acres, all of a sudden you're going to build this massive high school, when in the past I felt that you weren't able to, you didn't see that type of school going here because there weren't going to be enough students in the surrounding area to support that size of a student body?
So if we're talking about student numbers right now, there's not going to be that many students to support that student body. But if we're talking about, I don't know, if we're talking, those are two different conversations in my opinion, because we're talking 30, 40 years from now, we may need to have the capacity to build that type of school. If you're saying thousands of kids or thousands of homes may eventually be there, we could have the capacity to turn that land into a school that can handle that many students, and then it can be comprehensive. But for right now, with the numbers that we have, I can only talk about what I know for sure, and that's a much smaller school. Audra unmuted, she could pop in.
So to add to that, and what was previously said, is if you could get us 40 acres, that would be a wonderful thing to think about in terms of scaling throughout the life of the project and the future that's 20 or 30 years from now. Because then you would be able to have acreage that you could then build new buildings on to account for the new student population. But we are not going to have the numbers you'd have empty classrooms. It would be classrooms that are just sitting there, which I don't think is necessarily in the best interest of everybody right now. And so, but if you were able to get a large piece of property to where you could think about building in phases over the course of the development and over the course of the overall planned development plan, I know there's a more formal term, thinking about what the next future looks like in the next 50 years, that would be wonderful. But we can't build for what we think is going to happen in 50 years if, God forbid, another pandemic happens in 20 years and people leave our community again. Because I can speak to me, we have less students this year than we've had in the past because we were continually on a rise, but we have less now because people lost their jobs and they had to move out of the area, and they've moved in with families in other areas of the state or out of the state because they couldn't live here anymore. So I just think we need to, we all know this, but we need to be mindful of that we are very much looking at this as an opportunity. We're really excited about what could possibly happen, but we want to think in phases, and we want to be mindful of the timeline. We want to be mindful of the money, because we don't want to go broke now for something that's going to occur in 40 years if we can serve now and figure out how to build that later on when the students come.
So
and this was also, and this was the first time, at least for me, at least being part of this, hearing a location as well as the size of land, right? Our previous discussions, we were sort of talking about numbers because that's what we thought about the numbers that the development would generate. But now that we at least have an idea of what UPC is talking about, then the question goes to all the points that Audra and Kalima and Jackie have made specific to it.
Okay, so aside, oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to throw one thing out there. I think it might be beneficial. It's always hard to talk about projections. I mean, there's many people who are paid to develop projections, and they're paid based on how accurate their projections prove to be. But we're looking at this from the front end, and we don't know. But one thing it might be good to do is to plan to have our thinking in terms of contingencies. So if the population keeps growing, maybe the land isn't all granted all at once, but if the population keeps growing, then land becomes available. Maybe it's not at the same place. Maybe the middle school and the high school split, so the better optimization of sites, or but if we plan it, if we talk about contingencies, we could have a model like Plan Bay Area where we're going to have a lot of growth, and we could have a plan that says, you know what, the economy is suffering, California isn't doing as well as it used to, and we're going to have to make drastic changes below anything we're talking about now. So talking in contingencies, maybe one way of approaching this.
I think that's really a good idea. And then we could, if that land is not needed, right, then maybe it could become some other sort of community benefit use, like a community center or something of that nature. So aside from just trying to negotiate more land.
Right. I would say really quickly to Kima's point, though, that part of this is that we don't have to build something, right? That the major hub of the school would already be built. So separating it out, that sent all kind of alarms, because I'm like, that's a major bond that we're going to have to pass to build a whole new high school. But building a building, which is what we have done at our schools, that like Jefferson grew, so we build another science wing, and that opened up a lot of space and opened up a lot of capacity. That's a whole different conversation than building an entirely new site. So I think the land has to be all in one spot so we can build out.
My point was contingencies, not about what specific kind of school it would be or how the programs would be allocated.
Right. No, this is not a program allocation. This is a straight land, and so the contingency has to be the land all in one space, because building out a new facility would be hugely expensive. Right now, the big portion of this will be picked up by the developer. A new facility, I don't know if the developer's like, oh, in 20 years, I'll come back and build you a new high school. He's not going to do that.
So, I mean, I guess I just want to throw it on the table. I'm not gonna second guess you on that.
So yeah, so the city of Brisbane did conduct a study, and all these things that you're talking about are in that study. Right, it is about phasing in development, but of course, building a school, you wouldn't build a school until the situation warranted that, and we're not going to build any facilities until people start living out in Valence. And one of the things that the city council can do in the development agreement is that it can decide how the phasing of development occurs. So if one of the community benefits is to start maybe building the high school, maybe because there's enough capacity within the existing schools for the elementary grade, but we don't, of course, have a high school out here. Or maybe it's the other way around. Who knows, right? You'd figure that out. But the city council could say we want some portion of the school start to be built during the same time you build the housing, right? I mean, that's authority that the council has, and of course, we have to weigh all the community benefits. Not everyone is going to be saying, hey, all the community benefits that will come out of the Baylands goes to education. There's going to be some that will want, open space, or there will be some that want, more of an arts, theme. When I was talking with Belkin, he said that affordable housing was a community benefit. I disagree with him on that, but that's, what he said. So, everything is up for negotiations. But like Madison was saying, once we kind of drill down, what is your, ultimate desire? And I think, I hope in the end that we dream big, that we reach for the stars to start off with, and then start to scale back to what then is appropriate. And then if we want this, then what do we need to do to get there? And then that's when we do the negotiations to secure the land. It doesn't mean it's got to be built, but at least that land is secured. And once you secure the land for education, it's not going anywhere, right? It's not going to be used for something else. That'll be in the development agreement, and that's a contract. And that contract can't be broken unless the two sides agreed, right? The city and the developer, that we don't want to do this anymore. But I don't think that's the case. I think all of us would love to have a dynamic educational opportunity for every single kid in this area. And so I just hope that we can move that along and not get bogged down in saying things that we can't do, because there's a lot of things that we can if we decide that's what we want.
So again, I go back to a lot of stuff needs to happen on your end first before we can have those discussions. We need a plan. We need some more information. This is the first time hearing about maybe thousands of more possible residences. So, it would be nice to have, like you said, you hired a consultant that was without the districts. It would be nice to work moving together, having some say in the consultants that you hire on this specific topic and working on those things together, instead of you moving forward with it and then us getting the report after the fact.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Kalima. And but it's unfortunate that the previous superintendent did not want to collaborate with the city. It was an open invitation. And I know that Dr. Pittman and Superintendent Culver had also contributed feedback to the consultant. I mean, we would have wanted to do that, but your school district wasn't ready yet. I think to do that, and
so our previous superintendent was just to wait until after the election. So our ask was, you guys hadn't even had the election to approve it. So we were asking, can you just wait to see if it'd be approved first before we move in? And we were told no. Yeah. So I mean, I think that wasn't our superintendent not saying didn't want to work with you. It was just saying, we don't even know if you guys are going to wanting to do this yet. So could we just wait until after the election?
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, and that does make sense. From that perspective, that why move forward with a study if Measure JJ hadn't been approved. But the thing is that we had moved forward with allocating funds for it. Once Measure JJ passed, then we moved forward with doing that study. And so when you look at the study that was presented to all of you back in May, that study commenced after the election. So then that goes to your point. We already knew what the amount of housing was going to be. 1,800 to 2,200. Did we know, the makeup of those housing units at the time? No. And that's what the consultant did. They reached out to the developer. They drilled down what is the potential makeup. But when you do a study, all of us, right, in all of our capacities, whether it's the budget or a building, construction project, you have to do a study. You have to figure out what are those projections, right? And then based upon those projections, and of course you hire experts in the field to then give you that solid, guesstimate of what things could be. And then from there, you start to make your decisions. And so that's where that study is very valuable. But I agree, it would have been very helpful to have greater collaboration from the school districts. And so, I hope that as we move forward, that's what we do. Because if we don't do that, right, if we're not really working strongly together, then we'll just keep spinning our wheels, right? And nothing will happen. And
in our push.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. And when we're at a point right now where, yes, okay, we've got a little bit of a delay from UPC because of COVID, but they're going to present us with something. And then in the next several years, we're going to have to plan for what those community benefits are going to be. Yes, development for a new school could be, 8, 10 years, 12 years down the line, but the planning for it is going to happen now. And if you don't plan for it now, you're going to be out of luck when this comes time to build a school. So that's why it's really, really important for all of us to work together and put forth the best vision that we think will benefit all the kids.
So to that point, I think that's wonderful. And I think that one of the questions that we had is it might be helpful if when you're meeting with UPC and you're having conversations about education, that you invite, and I don't know if it's the two of you, or usually, the way we work is the superintendent has meetings and then brings the information back to the board. I think it would be extremely helpful if you invited the superintendents to be a part of those meetings so that the people who are dealing with education on a daily basis are in the room having those conversations, talking about what exists and what needs we have, so that we can work collaboratively with you. And it's not the city met with UPC and they said this, and then the schools met with UPC and they said this. I'm a firm believer, if everybody's in the same room, we have a better chance of all hearing the same thing than we do if we're in different rooms.
I totally agree.
I'm asking on behalf of my board, and hopefully I see heads nodding on behalf of the other boards, if the next time that you have a meeting with UPC and education is a conversation, that you invite us to be part of those meetings.
Absolutely. And, I'll let Clay speak to this. I don't think that we've had any recent meetings with UPC in regards to education. We've had communications with UPC regarding other items, and maybe, education is lightly talked about, but not in any detail. So, Clay?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I just for Audra, I don't believe I've ever had a conversation with UPC about education other than the one time I was over in your office.
Okay. Well, I want to just chime in and say that I wholeheartedly agree with what Audra said, and we do want to work together. And I'm happy to hear what you're saying, Cliff. We do want to work together, which is why we called this meeting. We thought we're having these different conversations, and different people take things from different conversations, and it's best to just have everybody in the same room and to get on the same page. And I do think that, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? We do need to have some parameters, to work within. But we're committed to working together. We're committed to having our school districts work together. We're committed to, the students from Brisbane. Obviously, the high school is their high school district. So, we can sort of plan how it's all going to look. And if it's in 15 or 20 years, it might look a little differently, but the commitment is there. the commitment is very strong from all of our school districts. So we wanted to really have that message come through very clearly tonight.
That's great. I really appreciate that, Tony. And, I'm so glad that tonight's meeting is a public meeting. We've had these 2x2 meetings in the past that have not included the public. And we have to stop doing that, right? If we're going to have a 2x2 meeting, it's got to be public, right? So that whatever is said, there's a public record, right? And people can, our constituents, they can say, hey, Cliff, or hey, Madison, I didn't like how you said that, or maybe you should, advocate for this, right? And so, that's democracy, right? And so, thank you for mentioning that. So I know, Madison, you have some more questions.
Yeah, I actually, so we have this 250 school number, and then we have this like vision of someplace like Terra Nova, which in past years was over 1,000 students. And it sounds like Oceana is kind of somewhere in the middle, but still an alternative school, but like with some sports. And so I'm just trying to figure out like how many acres that is. And also if there is some type of equation, like, with certain benchmarks get you certain things. So if you had, 15 acres, then you could have this size student body and this amount of amenities. And so we know what scale. So I understand that 40 acres is like everything. But of course, even the numbers of students may not pan out to warrant that size. So I'm just trying to understand, like, what's the scale here?
So that's a really, really good question. And I would rather get back to you with hard numbers once we talk to the people that do this for us. But I think 13 acres is, I think Oceana's 13 acres. Am I correct, Andy and Kalima? Something around there?
Actually, I think it's actually quite a bit larger, because remember in the past, it used to be comprehensive high school in the past.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's closer to the almost like 35, 40, because you're
okay.
including the football field, the side field,
Okay.
the back lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it used to be comprehensive.
It used to be, both Terra Nova and Oceana used to be full comprehensive high schools.
So maybe there's an example somewhere out of the district, like in this city, like, someplace that might have some of these things, but not like a football team.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely certain that a hard number exists. That's just not my wheelhouse. So I can get you that information, but I don't, I'm sure that there's a very clear, actually, Audrey, you just built a school. Do you have the numbers in your head? I mean, no, honestly, you just did this. So maybe you.
So the state makes recommendations, and then if you choose to deviate, meaning go smaller than the record, they have a limit, then you have to do applications. So for example, a comprehensive middle school is usually on 10 to 15 acres. A comprehensive high school is usually on 35 to 40 acres. Bayshore Elementary is on 2.9 acres. And so we were able to design a school in an urban community on a very small footprint. And so there are definitely limits that the state says, here's what our recommendation is, and we can get you all that information. We just weren't prepared to say, here, this is what it actually looks like tonight. But yeah, absolutely. And those are things that you want to consider in terms of dreaming big and what you want to ask for. But 11 acres is nowhere near building for a 3,000 student body population with with every single option available to a high school student.
Sure. And I just don't want to blind ask. I want to go in really knowing like what is possible and what could be accomplished with maybe less land. And I think the other point here is 13 acres maybe is like a nice small high school, but the 11 acres we're working with right now is both a high school and a middle school, correct? So that's even tighter. So aside from just trying to get more land so we have a bigger footprint to work with and we can accommodate more students, what is your vision in how the city is navigating this process. Is there anything else that you want from us besides trying to negotiate more land?
More money to build the schools?
I mean, I think too, is kind of let us drive the educational part of it. I mean, I think that's been the really hard part for me, is that a whole lot of information has been tossed out to the public prematurely. It was really hard to navigate with the community, having to talk about the situation at hand when we're talking about, is it going to be a middle college? Is it going to be a school of the arts? I have no idea. And I can't speak to that right now. All I can speak to is that we want to build a high school. We want to do as much as we can as possible. But for me, the focus is the negotiations with UPC, working collaboratively with our partner districts, and then building that out, instead of, to me, it's been the exact opposite. It's like we're trying to mold ourselves to the idea that the community is already fashioned for us, and not allowing us to do that work as educational leaders. So the freedom to be the educational leaders we're all elected to be, and work collaboratively with you in the city, I think is my biggest ask right now.
All right. If I can ask, some questions in regards to the middle school, because this is what's being proposed. So, so I'm just trying to get an understanding, Audra, what's the typical range of middle school students that Bayshore has?
Well, our current enrollment for 6th, 7th, and 8th is 125 kids.
125 kids.
So building for 250 is more than enough based on the information that UPC has shared with us in terms of what they anticipate, what grade levels they anticipate kids being in terms of their numbers, and that still warrants other opportunities for students from outside of Bayshore Elementary to request to be able to come to our school.
All right. Yeah. So, in the study, right, it talks about 300 to 400 elementary school students. So
elementary is
K through 8, right? So say 400 was the number that would produce about 92, or that would produce 92 middle school students. So, and then I'm just, so Ronan, what's your range of middle school students that you typically have?
You're muted, Ronan.
Thank you. You got to give a little response time there, Audra.
I know you're sleeping, man. Your beard's getting long.
What's that, Cliff?
I just made a little joke.
No, I missed it. I'm sorry. So I think, what do we got right now at Lippman? 125, and we've had up to 160 since I've been here. And Tony, you were there before. You might have some numbers if you recall the size of Lippman. Small districts tend to fluctuate quite a bit. Audra and I can testify to that. Sometimes you get 60 kids coming through one grade level, and sometimes you get 32. So it kind of fluctuates in that range.
All right. So like about 130 is a average number per year, I guess. Would that be fair?
It used to be like 60 per grade. Is it lower than that now? 6th, 7th, and 8th?
Yeah, it's lower than that right now. But it fluctuates. Right now, Brisbane Elementary School is busting at the seams. We've had a lot of kindergarten classes coming through that have started. So, we've had, 50 kindergartners for the last, 2-3 years. So numbers tend to boost up. And right now we had a large graduating class leave and a small 6th grade come in, so we've got 2 6s, 2 7s, 2 8s, and there's usually between 20 and 25 kids per class.
And then I think we just want to be mindful that, Lippman's not going away. And so this is now another opportunity for more space for kids, because there might be a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader from Lippman that wants to go to this new school in the Baylands. And then the majority of them may not. And so it's opening up more opportunities.
All right. Now, so Dr. Pittman, you have you have some development that's occurring in your area outside of the Cow Palace. You know, what's the housing numbers there and projections for students?
So for Mid-Penn is, I'm assuming, is the development that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have exact numbers. They, like UPC, are somewhat estimates. They currently have 150 units that they will be changing to, correct me, Dave or Teresa, it's either, I think it's 450 units.
550.
550?
Yeah.
Okay.
But within those units, they're not all family units. So they are specifying that some are for senior citizens that have no children. Some are for single veterans that are coming back and don't have a place. Some are studios, so there definitely wouldn't be any children. And so the numbers are, I mean, less than what UPC is recommending, since it's only 500.
Sure. But there probably be at least like 20 or 30 middle school students.
No, I'd say probably more 20 to 30 K-8.
Oh, okay. All right. So like 10 then.
And we have room for those kids in our current environment, because remember that when we open a 6-8 in the Baylands, you're removing 6 classrooms from Bayshore to allow for an increase for pre-K through 5th grade. And so that will warrant the shift that comes to the current campus, as well as now moving those kids to another campus. And then the other piece is, you know, we're in these conversations right now. Yes, Kalima and Andy and Tony are thinking about the possibility of the Cow Palace being redeveloped, but we're not at a point where we're saying to them, hey, what is it that you're building? You need to contribute to make sure that we have facilities that can serve those kids as well. Because that's a whole other conversation. We don't even know what they're planning on building. Who knows when the state will say, okay, yes, go ahead and move forward. And they have to do their part as well, in terms of either providing us with our developer fees and or helping us expand our current facilities to meet the needs of the new students that would be in those populations.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, you know, in the study, it talks about, you know, potentially, well, it says 400 plus students coming from future development from the Cow Palace, but 400 plus, you know, that plus I think is a pretty big plus, right? Because if you're getting 400 students coming from the Baylands potentially, right, you know, it could be close to 800, you know, coming from the Cow Palace. Who knows, right?
Right.
But at least 400.
We also don't know the impact that COVID-19 had. I mean, this study was completed prior to COVID-19. And so there's a lot of information that has changed the dynamics of what our entire Bay Area looks like or could look like.
And to piggyback off of that, I mean, Cliff, you've been a part, like we're all part of the elected official meetings, and I've been getting the sheets of how many people in Daly City are getting on the rental assistance program. So once the eviction moratorium ends, if there's not another help that comes in, there's going to be a mass exodus out of Daly City. We're going to have a lot of space. So, so these are all the variables where I just feel really uncomfortable getting too deep into the weeds on a lot of these issues, because if you'd have talked to me last year about what was going to happen this year, I would laugh at you like, we're going to be what? So to try to predict something 10 years from now is kind of an insanity project, especially when we're looking at numbers. It's hard. So it kind of ties our hands a little bit to, I don't want to handicap a future board is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I'm not intending to do that. I'm just kind of looking at, a 250 student middle school, and then, kind of looking at, okay, what's in Bayshore today? What's, projected from the Baylands, right? That's 217. And then adding, say, another 10 from Mid-Penn, Mid-Penn Village, or whatever that development is. That's not even counting, right, the Bayland. But, if you're looking at 227, well, now you got 23 spots open. Maybe 23 spots that would be available for a Littman kid, or actually not Littman kid, I would say a Brisbane school district kid or any other outside of the school district kid that would want to go to that school. So, I mean, is that, you know, I mean, is that kind of a realistic like window for,
Doesn't this
you know,
circle
someone
back?
being able to attend that school?
Doesn't this circle back to the whole acreage aliquot and what will be built there when this time comes? I mean, isn't that the whole, why is this question any different than the other one? The high school.
Because remember, we had these conversations with UPC when they said to us, we are allocating 11 acres.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, well, in 11 acres, this is what we can make happen. But if you go
absolutely.
back and say, we want something bigger, then that has to be a negotiation, and we will gladly figure out how we can work to make this happen to serve the larger community. But we have to work within what has been communicated to us.
Yes, and this is what you presented to us too.
Hold on, Cliff. If we can't get more land, right? And let's say we're going to be working with 11 acres and you've come up with a division, 250 middle school students, 250 high school students. Shouldn't we be able to talk about that now?
What is it that you want?
Nothing. Well, Cliff was just getting into the middle school division of students. So if things were to stay constant and that's what we ended up having, only 11 acres to work with. And we've made projections so far about what that school might look like, because this is something that, you know, the board right now can say, yes, we can afford that if we don't go outside our means. So can we talk about, in the event that that is really what we end up with, specifics about that school?
Well, that makes sense.
I think it's hard to do. I think to Audra's point though, we don't know what our enrollment numbers are going to be. I mean, we could talk about what they are right now, and that they're most likely, if we're looking at numbers right now, there'll be space for everybody right now because we're all under enrolled.
Well, I mean, if you, again, you know, like what Madison is saying, you know, if the 11 acres is what it is, if the 250 school middle school is what it is, right? We're not able to get that additional funding. I'm not saying that we can't, but I'm just saying if that's what we're working with, because that's what has been presented to us, right? That's what you envisioned with the developer. So we weren't part of that meeting. So if that's what we're working with, and we're looking at the projections from the study for the Baylands and what you currently have, it does not leave a lot of room for other development that can occur in your district. So my question is that if that's what it is, could you have a capacity issue just with Bayshore kids?
You know, I think going back to this for a second, Cliff, I think this still goes back to what we've been saying all along. It's about the land, right? So I don't think we should stay stuck on the 11 acres right now. I think what we'd like to see is, what do you think you'll be able to do in your negotiations? I think we can come back to the discussion of what an 11-acre school could look like if you failed in these discussions for adding more land. But I think to speak to what that school would look like today is premature, because you know, you've already indicated from earlier in the meeting that you would like to be able to see some other types of programming, and you know, and I think and you just said let's dream big. So my attitude on it, let's just see what we can get, and then we'll work from there.
Yeah, but again, 250 is what you've put out there, right? So I mean, that's the discussion, right? But on the agenda it says 250 middle school students and 250 high school students. So that's the parameter that you gave us.
The 250 middle school, those numbers were created based on UPC saying we have 11 acres for you. That wasn't us saying we only want a school for 250, because we're not negotiating with the developers, you are. And so that's why we felt like we needed to be in the same room. The other piece that I said before, and I want to reiterate, is when the Cow Palace gets ready to develop, we will have similar conversations with them. If we have only been given 11 acres in the Baylands and we have been only given a school that serves this many students, then our new developments where we're building, they're going to have to step up and help us figure out ways to build more facilities to serve the students that may not be being served in the current environment. So we don't have anything written in stone because I haven't seen anything about what's going to happen at the Cow Palace. Again, the conversation about the Cow Palace is similar to where Brisbane was 5 years ago about the Baylands.
Oh, okay. So so I don't want to fight you, but I think what we can all agree on is that 250 middle school students is not enough, capacity. Okay. It sounds like that is not enough for what currently exists and what potentially will come out. And I just want to can we get to that point? That is not enough. Are we good with that? That we should be trying to have a facility that could have more students? Is that good?
I can't speak for everybody else, but I said it before. Go big or go home.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Right, because again,
that's great. Okay, so I think we're there.
It still has to be in phases. We don't want to build for.
Oh, we know that, right? And it's in the study, right? We're talking about the phases, right? You build based upon the capacity needs at the time, but you need to have the footprint in order to be able to do that. So I'm just.
Right, which goes back.
That's why we're having these talks, right? We shouldn't. Here's the thing: we shouldn't be like. Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be like a a combative thing. It's just like, hey, I'm just trying to get some information. So, thank you, Madison. You got some questions?
Yeah. So I'm just curious about how Jefferson High School District's approach would be with the high school segment. Since I know you're facing this in other schools that have been impacted. And so let's say that we have a middle school and a high school together. Do you envision those middle schoolers having priority that are at that school in the Baylands having priority to be admitted into the high school, or would you do it based on zip codes, or how do you think you would manage something like that?
We don't know. Again, this is really, I can tell you hypothetically what we possibly could do if the school was open right now, but I have no idea what the needs of a future school district could be. We could have a school in Brisbane that nobody is attending right now because something happened in that area and everybody's going to other schools. Or we could have people want to go to Oceana and Jeff and there's not a need. So we adjust our policy depending on what the need is. So we have the capacity to do things with our zip codes to allow preference to other schools. So what we currently do, and I'll just talk about what we currently do, and I don't know if it'll be the future school, but currently every school, neighborhood school, the people who live in that neighborhood have the priority at that school, except for Oceana, because that is an alternative school. Every other high school, the people who live in that neighborhood have zip code preference. The only other difference is that Brisbane students now have zip code preference at Westmore.
And so that was a magic wand you guys just were able to do for us, just because that's a board decision.
That is a board decision. Yeah.
So they made that decision.
But boards could take that away too, right? I mean, that's just there isn't anything that's set in stone.
But we're here to serve the communities, and we're here to do what the community needs. So I'm assuming that every board ahead of me is going to act in good faith and do what's needed for the community. And at that time, Andy can speak to this too. As a board, we heard the Brisbane residents. I agree that it was the previous policy was not fair, and that due to the lack of schools in the Brisbane area, we needed to open up all our schools for Brisbane preference. And so that's what we did.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for doing that.
I think Ms. Preston wants to say something.
I just wanted to address Madison. I think that when we were talking, it's natural to start thinking about, well, how are we going to make sure that these kids get in, and what's it going to look like? And we talked about it being a STEAM school. We talked about it, we naturally go there. And, how are we going to make sure that the Brisbane kids who want to get in can get in? Okay, we'll do the zip code. So we actually had a lot of these conversations. And then we kind of stepped back and thought, wait, we're making plans, as Kalima keeps saying, we're making plans for a future school, a future school, a future board, decisions that might be the right decisions, but might not be. And so that's why we kind of stepped back, and we didn't, you know, we even contemplated not even writing the 250 and 250 on that slide, because as we're talking about, we're basing that on that 11 acres that UPC said we had. So, you know, there's a tendency to want to know exactly what it's going to look like and how are we going to answer some of these questions. And we don't exactly know, not because we're not all bright people in the room with really good ideas, but we just don't know what it's going to look like at this moment. So I'll kind of come back to the fact that we are committed to working together. We're committed to making sure that the students from the Brisbane district are included in this new school. So those are sort of the common thing, the basis. Like, we're committed to doing that. What it's exactly going to look like, we don't know. So.
And it's really, you know, it's really great for me to hear you say that. I just know, and I'm asking this question because I know you've dealt with this in the past, and I know you currently deal with it, and I know that you have policies in place. And so it's just good for me to have some kind of understanding of like a way that you might tackle a similar issue here. Because if I do the math, and you have 200 middle schoolers, right, and they're in 3 grades, that's 83 kids a grade, 250 middle schoolers, and then you have 250 high schoolers that are in 4 grades. That would be 62 kids a grade, right? So that would tell me that 25% of the graduating 8th grade, if it was at full capacity, would not be able to go to the high school. And so you get into this weird dynamic where it's like all the spots may be up for a lottery. And how do you do that? And sounds like there could be priority given to, you know, a certain zip code. And then also on the flip side, you have the situation where it's like these kids have been going to this middle school for 3 years. They're super comfortable. They know, you know, they might know kids in older grades, and then all of their spots are up. So it's like this weird, I'm just curious how you might tackle that. You know, would you potentially, you know, make it so that none of the 8th graders could continue in their existing location? Or would you say, okay, we're giving you priority because you've already been in this environment that you're comfortable with, and then that leaves very little room for people, say, graduating from Littman, who would be able to go to that high school? So I'm just trying to figure out, like, if you guys had any policies around things like that, or kind of what your thoughts were. I know that nothing is concrete right now. Mm-hmm. It's just good for us to get an understanding. So I know, like, okay, wow, this is a trade-off. If I'm getting a school this small, this might happen. And so I know, hey, I need to at least get a school that can accommodate X amount of students so I can avoid that situation from occurring.
Yeah, I think you're thinking like a board member. I mean, those are all the things that board members will be thinking about. And those are all really smart questions and things that will have to be solved. I think that you're right. Students who've been going to the middle school very likely may want to continue. What we also see is that they want to go to they want to go to some place that's different. They want to go to Jefferson because of the theater arts program that's super great there. Or they, want to go to the lab. They're into wood shop and all the technical stuff that's happening at Westmore. So kids don't always go to the school that's closest to them. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I think that that all of those things will be taken into account. I don't know what the policy will be, but yes, school districts set policies like that. When I was in Brisbane, we allowed every interdistrict in until we became basic aid, and the funding shifted and we started having a budget crisis, and we were like, we're not going to be able to accept every interdistrict in anymore. But we want to make sure that the kids who are already here get to stay here with their peers and graduate. So those are the kind of things that school boards grapple with, and they think about their student bodies. They think about, the neighborhoods that the kids are in, and then they set policy. So there isn't an existing policy that will speak exactly to this scenario, right? But policies will have to be put in place. And that's something to take into account when we're looking at how much land we need to build a school and how much capacity we'll need. Like, maybe you need the high school section to be bigger than the middle school section for some of the reasons that you're pointing to.
And I think
Can we open to
also,
our input on that?
but another part of this is that, and I think Audrey and Ronan can speak to this too, but I know from experience with the Pacifica School District, but the K-8s, there's usually never room in the K-5, and there's always room in the middle school, because once they get moved to middle school, a lot of kids peel off and go someplace else. They felt they've done that time, and they move on and do something else. So there's always open enrollment spaces in the Pacifica School District in the K-8s for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so I'm seeing this is probably going to be the same thing for this school, is that we're assuming that every middle schooler is going to want to go on and be a part of this high school. I doubt that's going to be the case at all. I think there's going to be a lot of peel off.
Even right
You
now,
don't think that the curriculum is going to be tied together? I mean, I know that was one of the things that Vilken said he talked with you all about. It was the 6 through 12 STEAM education, right?
It totally will be, but in our K-8s, the curriculum is tied together. Like, for example, Ocean Shore in Pacifica School District, that's a really curriculum that's completely tied to that K-8 system, and they still see a lot of peel off from once kids reach middle school and they leave and they go to IBL or they go to another school. It happened.
Yeah.
And so that school is really hard to get into, K-5, much easier to get into in middle school because of the drop off.
So I think that two things. One is the beauty of having a 612 campus allows us to create those partnerships and provide opportunities. But at the same time, to Kalima's point, it doesn't mean that because you are attending 6-8, you have to go there for 912. But what it does mean is there are more opportunities for us to partner with the high school in terms of courses that we could possibly offer and share staffing, so that we can provide many more options for our kids. But again, it doesn't mean, even though there is that conversation and possible thorough lines through curriculum that may be focused on something, doesn't mean that because a student participates in that particular course group in 6, 7, and 8, that they are required to stay in 9, 12. They will still be given the opportunity to make a decision as a family unit on what high school in Jefferson Union best meets their needs, because every child is different. And that's one of the beauties about Jefferson Union, is that it truly is an open district to where kids get that option. There are many high school districts that you go to the school that's down the street from your house and you don't get an option. And so what's beautiful about the high school district is that kids and families are able to decide what meets their needs so that they can continue and be at a place that they want to be.
And we have a pretty good distribution across all the Jefferson schools right now, the highest being Oceana, but we have attendance at every school in the Jefferson district.
And Cliff, we did start going, you're right, we did start talking in that meeting about, well, we can do STEAM, we can do this, which is what educators do, right? We started getting excited about some of the joint collaboration that could happen. And then we kind of thought, okay, wait, we need to back up a little bit because we're not sure what it's going to look like. It may do this, it may do that. But yeah, we did start having conversations about how we could have the program serve, have high school kids and middle school kids working together collaboratively in different ways than happens when you're on different sites.
Sure. Well, let me just share my concerns. So, I'm going to get to the end, and like 250 students is not enough, right? Just like 250 middle school students is not enough. But since this is what has been presented, that's what we're working with. So we've talked about all the different.
But it's only presented that way. Get us the land. If you think it's not enough, then negotiate and get us the land, and we'll build bigger. I mean, I think that's the answer. That is the answer.
Okay, so let me finish, Kalima. So with the question. So
no problem.
Okay, thank you. I will work hard for you, but we got to be working together, right? So
this has never been my issue. I've been asking to be in meetings for you forever and been denied the access, but okay.
Okay, so so Jefferson Union High School District is open to all the schools are open to everybody. So would this school be open to everyone? in
Yes.
the Jefferson Union High School district. Okay, so it'd be open to everybody. Okay.
Brisbane students would have, so again, this is where I don't want to have this discussion because this is a future conversation. I can talk to you about what is happening right now in JUHSD schools that are already built. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. What I'm saying now may not be the future for the JUHSD schools in the future. So we don't know the answer to these questions. What I do know is that if you are afraid about capacity in the school, then negotiate and get the land. And then if you can't negotiate and get the land, then I'm more than willing to go down this. But I'm feeling like we're spending a lot of time here unnecessarily.
So, you know, I wouldn't ask the question if I didn't think it was important. So if you could allow me to just continue to ask my questions, I'd appreciate that. You know, by asking these questions, I think what we do is uncover why 250 students doesn't work, right? But we have to ask these questions. If out in the public realm that a 250 school high school or 250 student high school is great and all the Brisbane kids can go to it, and then you know, then when we start to get down into the details, like you were talking about, Tony, you know, then it's like maybe it's not going to work, right? I mean, you got the, you know, if you have a great, you know, 6 through 12 school, right? Which I know that's what you want. You're not going to want to just do a, you know, run of the mill type school. You want to do a great one, and right. And if you got a great school, those kids from middle school are going to want to continue. At least that's how I would think that they would want to. I mean, we know that there's other, you know, variables out there, you know, sports or you know, performing arts or whatever, right? They want to go to a private school, right? A lot of parents, you know, have connections with the private schools, and they want their kids to go to that private school that they went to. We know that's going to peel them off. But, you know, when you have, you know, potentially, you know, all these middle school students from both schools, and then it's only 250, you could run the risk, right? You could run the risk of not having the capacity. And then that creates problems, right? That creates problems for parents that maybe they're at the Bayshore school because we got the capacity issue, everyone's got to do a lottery thing, perhaps, and that would suck, right? And so I think, can we get to that agreement that 250 really isn't, you know, gonna meet the need based upon you know, the projections out there? Yes, we don't have a crystal ball, but we still have to plan for the future. We can't just say, hey, you know, because of situations that are happening today, we can't plan anymore. No, we got to continue to plan, but, you know, we make adjustments as the, you know, as they come along.
So, go ahead, Tony.
No, I was just going to stop for a minute just to give us a time check. It's 6:15. We wanted to give some time for public comment. So I hear you, Cliff, and I think that we're kind of going around in circles a little bit, because I think, again, it's sort of that chicken or the egg. We're willing and I think happy to have a larger high school. We can't do that on 11 acres. So, you know, I think that until we know if there's more acreage, we can't really even think about a bigger high school.
So, you know, if you guys could come back to us and say, you know what, 11 acres, 250 middle school students, 250 high school students isn't going to cut it, Cliff. It's not going to cut it. I know that, you know, this is what the developer wants. You know what the developer wants. He's going to want the thing that costs him the least amount of money. Come on. That's what they're in the business for. So you need to tell us, like, hey,
you're asking us to ask you for more land. Is that what you're saying?
What you need to tell us is like, okay, here are these potential increases in population growth for the student body. And how we, you know, we need to work with you, City of Brisbane, to be able to accommodate all of that, because we should, you know, make sure that the high school that we do plan for can accommodate every single kid that graduates from Littman, every single kid that graduates from the Bayshore Middle School. And, you know, we got to be able to do that. And if we're not planning for that, right, then we're doing a disservice to all the kids, and we're doing a disservice to families that are going to be like San Francisco. Where's my kid going to go? I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to get my local choice, because then, you know, I might have to leave the area. Now, that might be good for some people because that's what they want to do, but it's not, we can't like say, just because it was good for me to leave the area doesn't mean that it's right, you know, for someone else. And so we need to accommodate for that.
I do think the assumption is that every Brisbane kid will want to go to this school, which I think isn't a given. I think it may be, but I don't think that's.
I don't think.
No, I agree. I agree with that. You know, not every kid is going to want to go there. Absolutely not. Yeah. But if we create a school that is dynamic, right? I mean, you look at other school districts that have that special school. And I'm not saying anything, you know, out of disrespect for any of the Jefferson schools. I'm not doing that. But what I'm saying is if there's a dynamic school that is desirable, more kids are going to want to go there than not. And so,
right. So I think we do have schools that are desirable, but what I also say is, if we were to build a special school, like you're talking about a DTech, would it be smart to put it in an area that may not have lots of transit lines, right? So I think if this district were ever to build a school like that, it would probably be in Daly City, which is surrounded by reliable and lots of transit. But that is, so again, we're getting into weeds of a conversation that should be a JUHSD board conversation. And this conversation should be more about the goal is to get a high school into Brisbane, not not is it going to be a DTech school? Like, I think I'm here to make sure that people will have a good quality high school in Brisbane that if we go by the rules that are available for all of our other school districts, Brisbane students will have first priority to. That is what
you know, I think that's great, you know, that you're committed to wanting to have a high school here. You know, the Baylands does have incredible transit modes. In fact, it's much better than, again, no disrespect to Daly City, but there's a Caltrain station. There's light rail from Muni.
A Pacifica student would have a really hard time getting to a DTech type school in Brisbane.
Just like we have trouble getting to Pacifica.
Exactly. So it would be but a Pacifica student would not have a hard time getting to Daly City. A Brisbane student could get to an area in Daly City. So if we're going to build a school like a DTech, we would put it in a place in our district that everybody could get to. So
I know, I hear you. You know, I mean, I'm just getting feedback from parents. They want something special, right? And they want something unique.
It will be something special. I think all our schools are something special.
And I think, well, again, I mean, I don't want it to be disrespectful to you, right? But what they want is something special in town.
But I think by definition, it is going to be something special. It's not going to be a typical high school. So we don't know if it'll be a DTech or if it'll be, you know, some other focus, but it's obviously not going to be just the same as another high school, because it's going to have a very different characteristic.
So just to confirm we're on the same page, I think it would be helpful for us as we're trying to negotiate for the superintendents, or at least Tony and Audra, to look at those numbers in that link that you sent me and that you put in the chat, and kind of say, okay, here are the ballpark numbers of student body, how much acreage, and then we can, you know, we could follow up from there.
That sounds great.
And if there was a combination from the high school with the community college district, you know, I think there's great, you know, educational opportunities that will come out of that school that you won't find in other schools. So I know that there's public comment.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I did put that link in that Madison was referring to about sort of acreage and school size and all of that. So we will follow up with that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I know, Tony, I know you want to do the public comments, and I think we should definitely do that. I still have a bunch of questions, and so I'm hoping that maybe we can have another 2x2 meeting you know, all the districts, like in a week or two? I mean, would that be okay, or after the election? I know it's kind of a crazy time right now, but I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, knowing your questions in advance so that we can actually give you good answers, it would be super helpful too, because I'm happy, like the acreage question, if I don't know it, you know.
We could talk more about that when we have maybe some.
Yeah, so getting the questions would be great. I'm open if, you know, if others are. So we can talk about scheduling something after tonight's meeting is over. But I do just want to honor that we told people that they could make a public comment. And so I want to make sure that we get to that. And my phone is pinging as I'm trying to talk. So Candace, are you in the background there with public comments?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. Do you know how many do we have?
We have 4.
Okay,
4.
good.
We actually have 5 individuals, but one did say in the comments in the chat that you guys might be able to see that she's not going to speak, but I can call the names accordingly to see if they are on the line. If they are not, then I can read the comment or their question for you all.
That sounds perfect. Thank you.
The first one is Nancy Laksamana. Nancy Laksamana.
That attendee is not present. This is Jake. Sorry.
Thank you. I will go ahead and read both of her comments. She said, "This is not a win for everyone. You must involve the community. This is a huge communication problem in our community, both Brisbane and Bayshore. North Peninsula needs a high school. This is not going to change. Get it done. 400 to 500 is a minimum." Those were her comments. The next individual is May Christie.
Sorry, they are not present either.
Okay, I will read her comment. "My understanding is that the proposed location of a school near the tank farm has not been approved and was never our city's suggested location."
That is absolutely true, by the way, and is not a good location.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's see. The next individual is Michelle Salmon, or Salmon rather, Michelle Salmon. And she did mention that she's not going to comment, but I do still want to read it for her. "Wouldn't you want the school to be closer to Bayshore so that the younger children can actually walk to the school? The 11-acre site near the firehouse is too far from where they live." Okay. And the next person.
That's a great comment, but you know, if it's okay if I just
no, go ahead.
You know, these are excellent comments, and yeah, that school should be in the residential area. If it's going to be on the Baylands, it should be in where kids
That's what I
can
said
walk
at the
to
beginning of
school.
this meeting. I think we need to carry on.
Enough time,
we all
Jackie.
agree with you. We that's why for me, I keep going back to, it would be nice if we could get if we could pick, or someone could tell us where the actual site is so that we can make comments that or we can make plans that make sense. That's why we were asking to wait before we got into these conversations. That's why we were pushing to wait. It wasn't that we were not wanting to be a participant, but we're like, a lot of the pre-work to help us make the decisions haven't been done yet. So it would be nice to get clarification, like where the school would be located, how many acres it's going to be, et cetera. And then we can tell you what's possible. But it's like we're being forced to design what's possible before we even know what we're dealing with.
Candace, are there more comments?
Yes, 2 more. Don Timon.
Not present, sorry.
No problem. I will read the 2 questions. Can the city get the land allocated at the front of the project? And the second question is, can it allocate more than 11 acres for the high school?
So, could you read that question again, Candace?
Sure. The first question is, can the city get the land allocated at the front of the project? And then can it allocate more than 11 acres for the high school?
Yes, on both. So the city can negotiate with the developer and, even before things, get finalized. I mean, if the developer wants to give the land to the school district before there's a development agreement, for sure. But I know they're not going to do that. But then we need to have a bigger site. And the site that is chosen right now is the wrong site. And our community members, and you probably are one of them, Don, has echoed that absolutely on no terms are we going to have a school next to a tank farm. That's just dumb. So, but a more appropriate site could be, by the roundhouse, or perhaps, looking at a different location across the street, maybe the Levinson property, if that's, part of the mix. I mean, we do need to get together, all the school districts, and really start to dream in a big way. But we need to make sure that the site, wherever that school is located, not only is big enough, but it's safe, right? The school site's got to be safe.
All right, so is there one more, Candace?
Yes, one more, and I do believe he's still on with us. Michael Barnes. Mr. Barnes, are you still there?
Yes,
Mr.
I'm
Barnes?
still here. Hello?
Awesome. Go ahead with your question, sir.
Good evening, everyone. It looks like the Jefferson Union High School District and Bayshore Elementary Districts are working really well together in discussions with the Universal Paragon. Is there a legal document that describes this working relationship and how outcomes are negotiated? And a second question would be, is there an agreement between the City of Brisbane and Jefferson Union and Bayshore that the City of Brisbane negotiates the Baylands benefits for the school districts? I thought maybe the districts could negotiate their own benefits. Thank you.
Excellent questions.
You want to take the first question, or I can answer the second one.
Audra, do you want to answer, or do you want me to answer, or anybody? The first one.
Well, no. Have any legal document that is.
Yeah, there's not a legal document.
There's no legal document right now. That doesn't mean that when we got to the point where we opened up a 612 school, there definitely would be a legal document in writing that discusses how we're working together and what programs are offered and how we're differentiating and being separate, and at the same time how we're working together. But we're not at a point where we're ready for that yet. So to answer that, the answer is no, not yet. Yet is a good word.
Yeah, and then the second question, Michael, and being a council member, that the council's one of their jobs is to negotiate the development agreement. It's not the school, not the school districts, but the city can negotiate on the school district's behalf, and I know that that's what we all want to do. We want to be able to understand what are the needs of the school districts, weigh that with the needs of the community, and then find that happy spot if it's there. But not everything is going to come out of the development agreement to potentially pay for the new school, right? There's other funding mechanisms that the school districts can look at, and so it'll be a full court press on how do you find all those revenue streams to accomplish the goals that you want. And maybe after doing all of that, you realize that, okay, I can't do this, but we can do this, which is better than, somewhere where it's, only 250 students per school. We can definitely do better. And, as a council member, where I stand on this. I am passionate about education, and I want to help. But it has to make sure that we're that all students from all grade levels are benefiting.
I think the other important thing to note is that the city has a different kind of leverage here that the school district may not have. And so, you know, we can move things around, and we're negotiating all levels of this agreement. And so, you know, we might be able to get something on behalf of the school district that the school district might not be successful in getting on their own.
I would totally suggest that the city will need to collaborate with the district, Brisbane, with the board members. That's why they were chosen to be there. They're the ones who make that decision as educators, education. And so going back to you, Mr. Cliff, you mentioned earlier that when you had that meeting with the, what is that person, that you didn't mention education, but yet your statement that you just said that your passion is about education. So why was education never brought up in that meeting if this is the whole deal is about education, building the school?
So I'm sorry, what meeting was that, Teresa?
You mentioned the meeting that the district had with, is it BSP, or I forgot the acronyms for that.
Universal Paragon.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So the meeting I had with Greg Vilken. Yeah, you know, no. So yeah, I talked to him today so I could prepare for today's meeting because I wanted to know.
But no, you said that you met with them, one of the guys over there, that you guys met, but it was never about education.
That's what Clay said. That wasn't Cliff. That was our city manager.
But you guys met with them already. So anyway,
that was a one-on-one with Clay, not with me.
So anyways, if this is about education and
We met all the time.
not about any hidden agenda that anybody else have there, then the communication needs to be transparency. And if you want to work together, then I strongly suggest that you start with your district, with your board members, to start that conversation with them and start including them in those decision-making that you guys are doing.
But doesn't our district not have jurisdiction over this land? So wouldn't the majority of conversations about education at the Baylands really be between Bayshore and Jefferson?
Yeah, I think her point is both of those, that when you're talking about the Baylands, which is what we've already discussed and we've talked about, that we need to be included in these conversations.
Right.
And we need to be in the room at the same time. Her other point is that as the city of Brisbane, you're working with 3 different districts. And if you have concerns about education within the city of Brisbane, if it's in the Baylands, yes, Bayshore would be who you reach out to if it's a K-8 issue. If it's in city of Brisbane, Brisbane is who you would reach out to if it's a K-8 issue. And if it's a 9-12 issue, then you reach out to Jefferson Union, because Jefferson Union is the district that serves your students. So yeah. She just wants to reiterate that it's really important that you're reaching out to the districts to have these conversations and making sure that we're part of the process and that we're not hearing messages via other venues or other people.
I think there's definitely a willingness, and I totally agree with what the statement that you made earlier, and Tony echoed that too. You know, we want to all be working together because we need to negotiate something that's going to work. I can't negotiate something and then find out later it's not going to work. So of course we need you at the table. Ultimately, I think the whole conversation today has really been about stuff that's on the Baylands, and Cliff and I haven't really discussed anything now that has anything really to do with Brisbane, other than wanting to make sure that there's capacity at the high school for Littman students. But your point is well taken. And if we ever have an issue with our school board or Brisbane Education, we know who to go to.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, we have good lines of communication with our school board. You know, we collaborate on a lot of different aspects. Not, of course, not the Baylands, but we do with, you know, after school, middle school program. You know, we just constructed a new after school building on the Brisbane Elementary School District campus.
And I don't think anybody was trying to imply that you don't work well with the Brisbane School District or the Brisbane School Board. So I don't think that was the message. But
okay, good.
And you know, real quick, I just want to add in, you know, and technically speaking, Bayshore has been, the school district of Bayshore has been part of Brisbane for 50 years since it was annexed, and we would just like you work well with Brisbane, we are looking forward to working well with the city as well.
Close to 100 years, 1938. So
Same thing for Dave
so
and
I
Christie,
just,
because Dave and I were at a meeting together at the city council meeting. I don't know, what was it, David? A year, I don't know how, a year ago, a year and a half ago.
Yes.
We were saying this exact same thing. Please include us in the meetings. We're at the meeting. We're only allowed to talk during public comment. We weren't allowed to be part of the presentation. Other schools were being brought in to talk about their programs, and none of that was discussed with us at all. So that is what we're talking about. That's the point I think Teresa's trying to make, is that you guys have been moving forward with this and not including us. And I've been, you know, and so, yes, we want to work collaboratively, but I don't think the issue with the collaboration is on this side, because we have said repeatedly in public and in private meetings, please include us in these conversations. Please include us in these talks.
You know, absolutely. We definitely need to do that. And I know that you think that we haven't, but we have. And, you know, that study went out to, to everyone back in May. But
after the fact, like we weren't included in the, like, I'm sure the consultant met with you to go over the parameters. It would have been nice to have us all in those meetings to discuss that. That's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. And I hope that moving forward that we do that. But all the school districts and Clay can attest to this, we're invited to contribute to that study. And
actually, I remember this from when
so
we
I just want to make a point, and then I want to be mindful of time. I appreciate that you are saying that. I gave feedback that was not represented in this study. And so that's the point that Kalima is making, is that it's great that you're saying, and we can't go back and change the past. We are where we are right now. And so we have concerns about things that have happened in the past. You have questions about how we can move forward. I think we're at a point where we just need to say, okay, this is how we want to move forward so we can collectively work together, because there have been balls that have been dropped along the way, whether, and it's, life is life, and sometimes that just happens. And so we want to make sure that we are all working together to serve the needs of our kids. And in order for that to happen, we all need to be in the room together. And I know we've all said it round and round and round. And so I feel like I'm hopeful that since we are in a meeting that is posted on YouTube and that people are watching, don't know if it's recorded, but that,
I hope it's recorded.
That
okay, good.
We will continue to move forward working collectively with the city of Brisbane, the Bayshore Elementary School District, the Jefferson Union School District, and then collaborating with the Brisbane School District as well, because their students will be served by Jefferson Union. And if they choose to apply to a 6-8 campus, their kids may be served by the 6-8 portion as well. If they to stay at Littman, then they wouldn't. And so I'm just hopeful that as we move forward, that we are all ready to be in the same room at the same time, to hear each other's concerns. And when we give feedback, that our feedback is considered and taken into context, because sometimes it hasn't been. And I think that study would have been different if they had heard some of the things that we had said and recommendations that we had made.
So what's our next steps? Looking forward, how are we going to improve our collaboration in a concrete way? I think everybody was nodding their heads when they said we should work together. So are we going to have a follow-up meeting in a couple of weeks? Are we like, what concrete steps can we all commit to today as that next step to improve our collaboration? In the end, what I'd like to see at the beginning of the meeting, we had that slide that said the collaboration between Jefferson Union, Bayshore, and Brisbane. I'd like to see a fourth entity added to that slide, the city of Brisbane. And I'd like to see all of our residents and stakeholders watching us collaborate to create the best educational opportunity in the Bay Area, if not the state of California. That's my dream, the best educational opportunity in the state of California.
I would also like to see just a public space online or somewhere where all of this collective information is in one spot, so that people have a place they can go find the information and be properly informed, rather than having to dig on the city site, dig on the school district sites, that it should all be placed in a very accessible spot. and drive the communication and have a place where people can see the information. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to get public input.
And I think that's something that the staff, meaning me, Ronan, Tony, Clay, and Stuart, can work on, so that we're all sending similar messages. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea too. We just got to make sure that the information that is going out is accurate.
Absolutely.
We had, and just look, we've all made mistakes. I'll just say that, and we all could have done better, right? I mean, to your point, Kalima, and Audra, could have the city been more collaborative with you guys in that study? I'll say yes, right? We also know that there was information that was posted that was inaccurate, and from Jefferson, and we've addressed that. We know that at the meeting that you just had with UPC, right? Brisbane wasn't there. So if it's gonna be this collaboration, right, we all have to step up and do a better job. And if everyone's willing to do that, then our kids are the ones that are going to be, better served, for that.
So I'm going to say, I think we've all stated that we want to collaborate. I don't know how productive it is I'm not sure what your point was. I don't even know what you're referring to about erroneous stuff, but I don't think that's the point right now. Is we've had this meeting, and then to sort of end it on, well, you did this and you did this.
I know. I wish we wouldn't have had to go there.
Can we make a commitment? Can we make a commitment? And I would love to see this. I feel like every time we get together, we're all like pointing fingers. And I would love, like, the next time we meet, to not dive into the past. And I'll make that commitment not to do that, because I think that's what's really going to help us move forward. Because I feel like when we keep digging up all those old wounds, tempers get flared. And unless it's something recent, like totally with the study, that was recent. If something's on your mind that's recent, bring that up, because I can't make changes without feedback. But I think that if it's other stuff that we've already hashed out before, by going back there, it's really not moving us forward. So I think that is a concrete thing that I'm willing to commit to. I would love for others to be willing to commit to that. And that's how we're going to repair this relationship. And every time we meet, we're like, we're going to collaborate. And then we meet again, and it feels like it's not till the very end of the meeting, after 2 hours of going back and forth, do we feel like we maybe are kind of on the same page. So that's my commitment. If y'all want to join, I would love for you to make that commitment too.
I'm with that. Absolutely. And, if
what you're saying is, Davis, but here's the thing, we can move forward with the past, but that same behavior continues to go, and it needs to be redirected in a positive way. And it needs to be, we need to solve it. And we can't put the past and just cover it with the layer of Corona right now. We need to figure out what the past is, and that's how I move forward. So I commit to, and we need to discuss it. How are we going to serve the community and the public that they're listening right now if we have problems that we can't resolve? We need to resolve those problems.
You're
Cliff,
absolutely right, Teresa.
Cliff, you and I have something way past, and we slowly, overcome it.
Yes.
But if this is how we portray ourselves, I don't think we're setting ourselves in that big dream that we're all talking about. So it's good to move forward, but at the same time, and also we need to be sensitive of what we're saying, is because we're painting a picture here for a future generation that there are going to be future leaders deciding on what to do with the plans that we're doing right now. And I might not be around to make that decision, but we need to be very careful in what we're deciding right now and paint it right now, because it will affect 20 years from now. So that's my sharing, but I'm more commit into moving past, but still the past still come haunts you if you don't overcome it or talk about it.
No, you're absolutely right, Teresa. I completely agree with you. If I can ask you a question, how do you feel if we all, hired a third party, non-biased, independent facilitator to kind of help us through some things? Do you think that would be helpful? That the 3 superintendents and our city manager, Clay Holstein, had a meeting and they chose someone that everyone could agree with, and then we met and just kind of worked out whatever issues that we have, because we do have some things from the past that are definitely some open wounds, and those should be healed. And maybe having that outside entity would help us to overcome that, so that then now we can come together and really dream big.
Why don't we do this? I like your suggestion, Cliff, and I like what you said, Madison. And I feel like the 3rd grade teacher who says, when you apologize, you have to not do that again, those kind of things. So I definitely think that there are relationships that can be repaired. Looking at the time, because I keep, trying to be our timekeeper, at 6:45. So we do need to end, but why don't, I think that's a good suggestion, Cliff, that Clay and Audra, Ronan, and I can talk and maybe set up another meeting, talk about your idea, and then we can move forward that way, rather than sort of calling on everybody to hear their thoughts. Does that sound agreeable? Thumbs up, everybody?
I agree.
All right, great. I want to thank you all. I want to thank the public. I know that everybody here thanks everybody. So on behalf of all of the board members and city council members and everybody, thank you so much for your time. And I'm really looking forward to working with everybody moving forward.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Yeah.
Stay
Please
safe.
vote. Go vote.
Yeah, go vote.
Yeah,
Exactly.
definitely go vote.